Hello, this is Jason Hite, and today I'm going to be shooting a quick video to show how I paint the Biocraft pieces. These are the raw pieces that I just made that I'm going to be using in some of the promotional video stuff. But anyway, I want to show how easy it is to paint these on your own with simple paints that you can get at a hardware store and a gaming store. So, but before we do any actual painting, I did want to talk a little bit about safety, because that's important when you're painting. So when I paint, I always wear one of these. This was a little bit overkill for most people, but a simple mask. You don't need the lens on here, but this is what I wear because I do a lot of painting, spray painting stuff. So I wear one of these masks. I suggest you get one if you're going to do a lot. Or, you know, if you're going to do painting, just do it outside. You know, if you're going to do spray painting, I don't suggest you ever spray paint indoors. It's not a good idea. So I've got a little area set up outside where I do my painting. It's pretty messy out here, but it's the one place I go all the time when I paint. So it's the dedicated area for painting. You can also wear gloves, that sort of thing. Which I do occasionally if I'm doing a lot of spray painting, because I always tend to get it on my hands. So anyway, here we go. So here's the space that I do painting in, and I've got all my pieces set up, and you can see that I have little spray paint lids and little bowls that I put the pieces on. And the reason I do it this way is so that I can, like once I'm spraying, that I can easily turn the piece without touching it. So I just turn the base, and that's one of the reasons why I do that. So these ones I've already painted the fronts, and I'm gonna just turn them unsuccessfully. Now these are dry, they've been sitting, so I'm just gonna do it the fast way and just flip them around. But if you're in the middle of painting and you don't want to wait for a side to dry, you can put them on these little bowls and then just turn them as you're painting them by hand. For the paint I'm using here, this is a primer that I get, and I get this primer at O'Reilly Auto Parts store down the street from me. So it's just a white sandable primer, and I like to use one of these little handy dandy spray thingies. They just save my fingers. So when you're gonna do painting, you're gonna shake it up. So couple things to note when you're doing, it's actually easier to shake it from the can. So first you shake it this way, and then you want to get that ball moving down inside. So I also kind of do that to mix the paint up as best I can, and you want to do this for at least 30 seconds. So this is already pre-shook before, so this is difficult to do with one hand. Alright, so, and then when I paint, first when I start I kind of do a little off the side, and then these two right here I haven't painted at all, so we're going to start with these. First I kind of get an overall coating of the primer, and I'm not too close on it, I'm probably about 10 inches away or so, and then I come in and I do a little bit of close-up, just spurts. I hope I'm getting that. And then I do the tops, the sides, and then these ones I can do the backs. They're pretty flat, so and also pay attention to the angle at which you're painting. So if I'm painting at an up angle, everything below it, like everything's gonna be, the paint's gonna be applied on an upward angle. So you'll have to get from a downward angle too if you want a coverage. Sometimes I will come from below and grab that, which I'm not grabbing with the film because I'm trying to do too much here. All right, there we go. So now with these, I'm going to turn these and get the back so it'll all be dry at once. I go a little slow, they'll fall off, but it works fine. If you have a Lazy Susan, which I have one of those too. Those are great. But when doing multiple pieces like this, I just grab something that I can set them on. So you just want to make sure you get all 4 sides. And I don't worry about the bottoms because they're just going to sit anyway. Okay, and there's my primer coat. Alright, so I've let my primers dry, just the white primer, and these guys are ready to start painting. So my setup here is the same one outside, but this time I've got these little trays, and these are actually planter trays, these black trays here. And these guys, what I like about them is that they have these little gaps in between, these little trowels or whatever you want to call them, divots in the tray, which allow the paint to go down. So I like that. They're really cheap. They're actually made in my hometown of Akron, Ohio. So you can get them at any gardening store. So I use these to kind of help contain the paint. Then next, what we have are my paint bucket and my paint mix. I made the BioCraft Blue Wash, which I made a few months ago. And to make this wash, it's basically this is the Cayenne Blue mini paint made by Reaper Minis, reapermini.com. And so it's like, I'd say 1 part of this, and then also I also like to use Createx opaque airbrush colors, just because I do a lot of airbrushing, and this is just opaque black. So it's basically 1 part of these 2, and depending on how dark you want it, actually there's more blue than black. The black is just to darken the blue a little bit. And I mixed it in this bucket to 10 parts water, or thereabouts. So let's open this up. And this wash has been, it's kind of getting old, and so I just dump all of it. There's my mix in the bucket, and it's starting to stink because it's been freaking, it's so old. Oh god. Anyway, so really easy. So I just have just a 1-inch chip brush, and I'm gonna stick these guys in here. This is gonna be tricky to do with one hand. You get the idea. So that way it gets nice and soaked, and then I dump off any excess paint. Let's make sure we get in there with this. Try to get all the paint off that doesn't need to be on there. And it looks pretty gross. Lots of bubbles because I think I shook it too much. But anyway, that's my basic. That's what I do. So I'm just gonna wash all of these like this, because I've got so many to paint. I know it seems daunting at first. Try to pop these bubbles, and then the way I let the wash dry on these guys, because they have so much detail on the top there, is I actually do it a couple different ways. I let it sit this way first, and let it kind of dry that way, and then I'll come back and you'll see what else I do. I kind of do a multiple washes on this. This gives you a quick idea. So I'm going to go ahead and wash the rest of these and get them out to dry, and then we'll go from there. So all the pieces here have been washed and they're all drying, and now as you look closer at some of these, you'll notice, see if I can zoom into this one, you'll notice there'll be little holes here and there where the wash didn't get in the detail. So I just basically look for those spots, and then I just run around with my brush and try to make sure I get any areas that didn't get washed properly. And then also the paint kind of settles, so now you can see, you know, how much paint you've got in there. And I'll brush out the excess paint that's not necessary, 'cause it just might be too much. sorry if this is not the best video. But, I mean, this is real simple stuff. Anybody can do this. And you can do it relatively quick, too. Like if you had to paint a whole set of this stuff, you know, I could paint on one of these in a day, easy. And I know there's people out there who can do a much better job than I could. This is just the way that I do it, but I know there's probably better methods. But when I've got to paint 30 pieces in a day, this is probably the method I'm going to use. And this is only step one. There's a couple other steps that I'm going to go through in my process, but I'll be looking forward to seeing what other people. There's a lizard over there. Check him out. Come on. There he goes. Okay, so there'll be other people doing these, I'm sure, eventually, painting their own, and I can't wait to see, you know, their paint jobs, because I'm doing mine in like kind of like a spacey blue color. I'd like to see them, you know, a red dungeon, a white dungeon, a mix, a green. You know, you could do a lot of different colors with these. So this is just the way I do it. Alright, so we're going to let these dry, and then we'll go to the next step. Alright, so it's been a couple hours, and I'm out here to check these out. Let's see how well we did. They're not completely dry yet, but they're looking pretty good. Oops. So the backs are a little lacking, so I'm going to do, and you can see I've got some mist spots here, so I'm going to do another coating. I'm going to set these up right now. See, I got it to the stuff to rest in these areas. Now that if I put it up this way, then it's whatever paint I'm gonna put on there is gonna rest in these lower areas. So I'm gonna set these up again and do one more quick coating. So it's been a few hours, and my second coat of wash is now dry, or for the most part it's dry. And I brought it inside, and let's see if we can zoom in a little bit here. So this is just washes, just 2 washes on this. Get some pretty good detail. My main concern is the front detail, and the back I'm not as critical about. It could use probably one more wash back there, but I think for the most part it looks okay. I'm going to move on to my next steps, so you can kind of see. This is what I was really trying to get, was this guy right here, which turned out pretty cool. This light in here is kind of yellow, so it changes the look of this, but you get the idea. Okay, so the next step that I'm going to take is, now that all these have a nice wash on them, I want to do a little bit of detailing. And there's a couple ways that I go about that. So what I have here is, I'm going to use my Createx. And you could totally use, you know, any acrylic paint, I think, with this would be fine. I'm going to do just a couple drops. And then I'm going to add just a wee bit of water. That's probably plenty. Mix it up. See if I can do this with one hand. So now I've got basically a black wash, and I'm going to be really sparing with this. And I'm going to do what's called a spatter on this. So I've taken a simple 1-inch chip brush, and I've cut it down so that I'm just with these little bristles up here. Almost like a toothbrush. A toothbrush would work too. But I'm going to dip it in here and get it nice and wet. And let's see if I can do this while holding the camera. So I've put a nice little piece of plastic back here so that I don't get spatter all over everything. But this gives you an idea of kind of the effect that I'm gonna go for here. That's a little thick, but I think it'll work for the misty stuff. So now I'm just gonna do some spatter on these, and you probably won't be able to really pick it up that well with the camera. Let's get some more. And I always kind of do my first spatters up here because they're really heavy, and then I come in and then do. And you know, you don't have to do this. This is just my method. I like this kind of spatter technique. It just kind of breaks up the evenness of it a little bit and gives it a little bit of a chaotic kind of texture. And you could do, you know, a series of spatters on this in different colors. You could maybe do even like a white on top of this, which would also give it a whole other look. But that just gives it a little extra depth and detail, another layer, you could say. So I'm gonna finish doing spatter on this. I'm gonna spatter the backside and do a little bit of cleanup on the back and maybe add some more paint, and then we'll go to the next step. So I'm pretty happy with the detail on this guy. However, his eye seems really light. So I'm gonna just go in there, get paint in areas I don't know. I'm gonna go in there and just do a little bit of wash in the eye. I think it's a little too heavy. But I have the same wash that I used as the speckle wash, but I just want to get the very recesses of his eye with some of that black. And you can go in with a detail brush and detail your heart's content. But because I wanted those little eye sockets in there as deep as possible, I'm going to hit it with a little bit of black. And I've done some other stuff on these guys before to make them pop out a little bit. You could do some dry brush white on the top of his head and some other things. But I'm actually pretty happy with, got some little bit of too much wash on that one. I think it's because I let it sandwich up next to another one. So I don't like that. Might have to fix that. That side's nice. But anyway, yeah, let's fix that one a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to do a little bit of dry brush technique. And I've just got a brush here with some white acrylic paint. And you can use, you know, I like using a thick paint. But anyway, I've got my brush with paint on it. And I'm wiping it on a towel to get all the big clumps of paint off. And now I have pretty much a dry brush, but there's still wet paint on there. So then I'm going to take, so I've wiped the paint off. I'm just going to lightly, this is really tricky to do looking through the camera. And then I'll do a little bit on here too, so you can get an idea. Just to catch some of those highlight, those top surface areas. Please ignore the screaming children in the background. Anyway, so this is not as dark now, and I'm gonna get just a little bit on, since I'm already here, might as well. But I'm just getting a little bit of paint on there, not too much. So I like doing dry brushes and washes. Those are my favorite ways to paint because you don't have to bust out the detail brushes. Anyway, he's looking pretty good. Let's move on to the next step. Just a real quick thing. I've laid all these down on the back side because after looking at all of them, I still think these need a little more paint. They're just looking kind of sparse. I think I can catch more detail. So the secret, like I did on the front side, is to lay them down flat, and then I'm gonna do. I've got a little thing of wash here, and I'm not gonna do it too heavy. I'm gonna do it kind of light, and just get in there. And the more watery you make it, the lighter your wash will be. And this is kind of a heavier wash, plus it's been sitting around for months and months, so some of the water is evaporated and the paint is dried a little. So it's kind of a thicker, darker wash, which is fine for me. I hope this isn't too boring. But it gives you an idea. And I really like washes because they do most of the work for you. I would never want to try to paint all these individually and grab all this detail. But when you have a sculpture with a lot of detail, that's one thing I've learned over the years of sculpting is if you've got a ton of detail, you can get away with an easy paint job because the detail will catch your paint if you know how to paint it right. Another way to do this, which I'm not going to do on this particular batch, but I've done this before on some other versions of this, was to do, after I did this wash, I would do some dry brushing of a really light color on top just to catch the tops, the very surfaces of this. And you could, also do that with a 1-inch brush. I'm really cheap with my brushes because I ruin a lot of brushes, so I just buy the cheap 1-inch chip brushes. You can get them Harbor Freight for like $5 or something. I don't remember. $12. I don't know, for like a box of 100. But anyway, this is just my way of doing it, I guess. And I just didn't like the way they were looking, so I'm going to go the extra mile since I'm doing this on video. So hopefully this comes out. And the trick really of doing these washes is getting your paint in there. Because you can just brush your paint on top. That's not going to do it. You gotta tamp it. See how I'm doing the tamping? You gotta really tamp it to get it in there. Like some of these parts are kind of deep and they're hard to get in there, so you gotta tamp the brush. Another thing I've done before, now I'm going to go around and see what I've missed. Another thing I've done, actually these came out alright. Another thing I've done that's worked in the past really well I don't know where I was going with that. So the tamping, yeah. Okay. Oh yeah, that's what I was gonna say. So the other thing I've done in the past, if you get too much wash on there, keep a towel or like some paper towels nearby, and then just kind of run your paper towel over and soak it up. See if I have any laying around. Here's something. So this is just tissue, but this will work. So let's see if there's any in here that I've got a little too much. I can do it without getting a shadow here. So you see that there? I think it's a little too heavy. So I'm going to go in and just pat it a little bit and kind of grab some of that up. They call it the wipe away technique. So I'm now going to wipe away what I just washed. Makes no freaking sense whatsoever. But if you go another way, yeah, see, look at all that I've soaked up. Another way to go, if you feel like you've gone too heavy with the washes, is like I said before, once this is dry, we can do some dry brushing on it. And that also will bring up the surface, the very high surface textures if you use a light color and dry brush. So that looks better already. So it's been about 12 hours. I've let these guys dry up. So they're nice, and these backs are nice and dark. And the fronts, they look pretty good. So now we're going to move on to the next step, which is going to involve some airbrushing. Now this next step that I'm going to do, you can also do it with just a 1-inch chip brush, but I like using the airbrush because it spreads the paint more evenly and you use less paint than you would if you were doing dry brushing. But so these look alright. Now let's set up for the airbrush. Okay, so for this next bit, I'm going to be using some pearlized Createx. This is a pearl white. It's a semi-translucent. I've been using this stuff for years, and what I do is I actually have another batch of it mixed up. This is an older bottle, but this is watered down a little bit. I'd say it's probably like 3 parts of the pearl to 1 part water, something like that. So it kind of gives it'll give the pieces a nice shine, and I'm going to be using my single action, very dirty old Pache airbrush, and I have a little compressor here. I've been using this guy for years. I started on double action airbrushes, and I like single actions just because I'm just doing a coating. I'm not going to be trying to do anything detail wise. So if you're not familiar with airbrushes, these are good starter airbrushes. They run about $40 on Amazon, I think. This is your cone, and then there's a needle inside, and there's the little paint cup. So I've got my mixed paint. Let's load it up. Alright, so let's grab the first piece, and we'll start off with a wall piece. So let's turn on the air compressor, which isn't plugged in. Alright, we gotta plug it in first. I'll be right back. Alright, so now we're gonna do some airbrushing. First, so the tighter you have this kind of screwed down, is the smaller your spray will be. The more open it is, which I'm opening in it, the larger your spray will be. So we're gonna start relatively light. And I'm not drenching this. I'm just kind of giving it a coating. And it's probably really hard to tell on camera whether or not it's there, but it is. So we're going to put that one down. So let it dry. Is this the one I just painted? No, let's get the one I just painted. So this guy. Now, you can go overboard with this stuff real easy. This is why I water it down, because I want it more translucent. I almost went overboard on this one, but when it dries, it will be fine. Let's do this corner piece. Alright, so I'm going to do the rest of these with this little airbrush, and then we'll go to the next step. Alright, so here's all the pieces painted, and so you can see it's got some pretty good detail. For a quick paint, you can see some of the little splotches and stuff from the speckling that I did. So now the final part I'm going to be doing is really simple. It's just a triple thick glaze, and this is what I use. It's cheap. So I've let these dry for about 4 hours with the clear coating. And what this coat does is it gives it a nice sheen, which is I want this kind of slimy look. And it also protects the pieces. It gives them a nice little coating so that if they rub up against each other, it won't take the paint off. So they're pretty durable. So I hope you've liked my little tutorial. It's not very fancy, but with a little bit of work, you can paint a whole set of these in like 2 days, because you gotta wait in between drying, but it's really easy. Alright, enjoy! Hello, this is Jason Hite, and today I am on the side of my house where I do all of my spray painting, and my neighbors are talking. Wow, that sucks. I'm gonna have to